Hey guys, welcome back to the Manarchy podcast. My name is Chris. I'm here with Sumit and Wilson. And we're here today. We're just going to talk a little bit about manhood, men, masculinity, what it means, and how we can help to improve men's everyday life and just discuss how that affects us every single day as men in the communities. So, Sumit, well, let's start with you. Why don't we talk about what is a man? What is it? What does it take to be a man in today's society?
That's way too many definitions. Way too many definitions.
What makes a man a man?
I love this question, and the reason I love it is because there's so many facets to to this definition. However, if we were to see that there is a pyramid of masculine expression that has made men the way they are, the expectation that society has built around them, and then the cultural tropes that came after that kind of solidified it and be like, that's what a man should be like. Yeah. I think right at the top is the ability to make decisions.
True. Yes.
And I don't think it's anyone's going to disagree with the fact that a person who is incapable of making decisions or is consistently stuck in the limbo of procrastinating decision making is always going to be considered a weaker individual, not even a man, just a weaker individual. Mm-hmm. Because if you are unable to make a decision, whether that's in the yay or nay, it shows your inability to have conviction. Again, another trait expected from a man. Yeah. It shows follow through. Right, which is the sign of a consistent man.
Yeah, do what you say and say what you do.
Exactly, couldn't be said better. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, knowing that you have a purpose is also built on the fact that I'm going to have purpose when I'm going to actually put the hammer down, and then another hammer down, and then another hammer down. Right. Mm-hmm. So all of these things basically come into that one little foundation level factor that a man needs to show is here's my ability to make decisions on time.
Yeah.
When it's required, how it's required, and in the intensity is required. And here is my ability to deal with the consequences. Mm-hmm. Which is, in fact, oftentimes it's more important. Because sometimes the decision is very simple, but the snowball effect of it dealing down the line might be
repercussions of the decision
far more aggressive. And then you sit there and be like, ooh, what have I done? This, that. Mm-hmm. No, you sit there and be like, well, I messed up.
Right.
I'm going to get myself out of this, and here's my learning from it. Now, the next time I'm going to be a stronger person.
Absolutely.
There is no better definition of being a man if you are unable to make a decision on time.
Wilson.
Well, there is a perception of what a man is. He has to be strong, powerful, good jaws, nice hair.
Of course.
You know,
typical
like
masculine.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Now. No, but that's the kind of perception we have, right?
Right.
The guy has to be 6 feet and good shoulders and strong shoulders and what a woman likes or whatever.
Aesthetically imposing.
Exactly.
Biological perspective. I was attraction.
A couple of weeks back, I was just scrolling through Prime Videos and the movie of The Mechanic. Charles Bronson.
Yeah, got it.
You look at him. I've not seen him gymming and all that, but you look at his physique.
Yeah.
Like when people say, oh, this is a man.
Yeah.
But let me put it in different perspective. I'm from India. Mm-hmm. As he rightly said, a man is someone who can make decisions and own it up.
Yes.
But in our society, where there's so much of pressure, where you've got bills to pay, you see, everyone comes from a different cultural backgrounds.
Correct. Yeah.
And if you don't have a back or a support of your own people, this is where even the strongest of minds collapse. Mm-hmm. So a man is, like for me, I would say, listen, if I make this decision, what are the repercussions?
Right.
I have to pay bills, my son's education. I have to think about what would happen in the next 4 to 5 years, my car. There are so many aspects to it. Mm-hmm. So every time I make a decision, I'm willing to own it up. Yeah. But what is my backup?
Yes.
But that is also a decision, right?
Exactly.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
Not making a decision to plan better is a decision.
Yes. But then if you're planning better, if you fail, you see, the entire thing collapses.
But that's the case with business. That's the case with jobs.
That's with everyone. I'm just putting across to the audience. I'm saying,
agreed.
This could be the issues when you don't man up. But then these days, there are so many avenues, so many aspects. So I can really explore everything.
Yeah.
You can, in advance, figure out what is, what are your losses, what are your profits, whatever it is, and walk accordingly. And that is where I believe masculinity, the real definition of masculinity is leadership.
Yeah.
Within your family, where your son, your daughter will look up to you as a father, that how you're leading us, good if it's a success, how you're leading us if it's a failure. What is your reaction? Because if I, as a son and a daughter, facing some issues in the near future, I know I can come up to my dad and say, Dad, I'm facing this. My dad can say, I have gone through it. This is what you need to do. Stand firm, own up.
Or even if they don't know the answer, he'll be like, here's how you should handle
You
it.
should handle it. Correct.
That's
Yeah.
basically giving a decisive plan.
Yeah.
Look, for me, I think what it means to be a man has changed as the years have gone by. In maybe the 40s, 50s, 60s, there was a very ironclad idea of what, men and masculinity should look like, we should behave. And I feel like that has, the view of that has changed as the years have gone by. So now we've reached a point of, equality, that men and women, supposedly we're equal beings and we should be able to protect and provide in equal measure and complement each other, rather than one person being, the head of the house and the other person being the nurturer of the household, However, I think that the pressures of manhood still apply, whether whether the perception of what it means to be a man has changed. So we can say all these nice things about how things should be different, but the truth is we've all experienced the pressure to protect, to provide.
Exactly.
To be that person, to be that decision maker, to be the person who, has to make sure that you take risk, but you mitigate risk at the same time. Yeah. These things are ever present in our lives on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think there is an old saying, I'm a big fan of philosophy if you guys didn't know, but there is an old saying that says, the most difficult thing for a man in this life is to be who he is in a world that is constantly trying to change him.
Yes.
Heavy.
I've heard that.
Heavy.
And that is such a true statement.
Exactly.
That everything, there's so many, obviously we all know that life is multifaceted and things can happen at any time and whatever, and how prepared you are for those things is really all down to the individual. But for me, I think that, being able to, like we say, make that decision, stand your ground, die on that mountain if you have to, because you truly in your heart and your head, you feel that that's the right decision for you to make. That's what I think it means to be a man.
I couldn't agree more. Just the one point. We can get into a whole tirade about the gender roles and all that stuff, and the equality between the genders that has actually caused a little bit of a crisis, right?
Mm-hmm. Not little bit.
However,
not little bit.
We're biologically designed
exactly
a certain way, right? That's not going through. We're talking about centuries, if not millennia, worth of conditioning, even from our previous genetic forebearers, right? From the apes onwards, right? There's a societal structure wherein masculine expression of energy requires that protection. That I'm going to make decisions for the group, for my unit, for my children, all that stuff. That's
right.
not going to go away anytime soon. It doesn't matter what the cultural expression is going to change in these past 10, 20 years.
Agreed.
With any amount of expressions of woke culture or whatever it is, right? We were talking about equality of opportunity rather than equality of outcome, but it has come to equality of outcome now to the point where it's almost damaging. So in a healthy unit, a family unit, and you can probably speak to that, a man will still express himself in the way he's expected to from what's been going from millennia.
Exactly.
The woman will still have the ability to contribute equally in a way and not be pigeonholed into that corner of just being the nurturer and the childbearer and all that.
True.
However, she will still, in a healthy manner, submit to the decision-making prowess of the man. And in many other ways, the man will submit to her, saying that, okay, in these particular scenarios, you are clearly the boss. You're clearly stronger. So there is a level of respect that gets built on both sides. However, when it comes to the Titanic situation, right, he is still going to be the guy who's going to stand there and be like, women and children first.
By the way, to that point, I will say that it's just my humble opinion that there is no such thing as different and equal, right? That doesn't mean that you're not both valuable. You're both valuable in different ways,
Yeah, yes,
right?
yes,
So
yes.
What I
the
meant,
idea
actually.
is that you complement one another. So people, and if you even just take gender out of it, people have strengths and weaknesses. Yes. We all have strengths and weaknesses here, even at this table. So the idea that people are different, completely different, by the way, like we're not even vaguely similar. I mean, you can read some stats on how where the similarities are. But as men and women, we are so vastly different in many ways. But we have our strengths and our weaknesses, and women have their strengths and their weaknesses. And the point is that they come together and complement one another.
To create a holistically powerful unit.
Right, exactly, So, look, I think that men and masculinity and manhood, we have our pitfalls and we have our trials and our tribulations. And sometimes I think that we can get caught up in losing ourselves maybe a little bit, losing who we are, what we stand for. I mentioned before, the social influence and those things. What would you say? What's the first thing you would say that you would try to cultivate or change about yourself? Where would you start in terms of redefining your manhood and masculinity?
There's so many answers to that question, but if I was to start with one point, I would first try to do whatever I can to understand what I stand for. Because a man is decisive, yet does not know the values and the principles that he actually stands on to make those decisions. Yeah. Is a man who's just really good at aiming the gun and hitting the bullseye, but doesn't know why he's hitting the bullseye.
Right.
And what's coming after that? What was he even doing hitting the bullseye in the first place? So there has to be an understanding of the purpose, your values and principles that you will stand by. So when you make a decision, you know why you're ready to die on that hill.
Yeah.
Right? So first, it wouldn't even be what society expects from you. It doesn't even be how the opposite sex might perceive you or what you need to achieve outwardly to get acceptance from everything external. Look internal first.
Yes.
And find out what is it that drives you, your identity. Who am I? What am I made of? Yeah. Number one. Number two, my strengths and my weaknesses. Yeah. Very difficult to own up to it. Strength is very easy for everyone thinks they're strong, right?
It takes a level of self-awareness that not many people have.
Absolutely. I suck at this. Now let me
We all do.
Let me work on it.
Yeah.
Let me convert that into something that can become someday my strength, right? And number three would be like, how would I react in situation A, B, and C? And why would I react that way? And from there, you start distilling it down into that principles. You do this for a company, do you not? Everyone does this. There's a mission and a vision, right?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Why do we not
apply it to ourselves?
Exactly.
Yeah. We are a company, right?
Yeah.
We have different departments
within ourselves.
Inside.
Yeah.
Every single thing working with the CEO sitting right up here, who's like got this little marionette thing controlling your entire body.
Yeah.
And yet here we are not thinking about our own body, whether it's from a physical perspective or from a mental perspective. And
it's actually quite crazy how much we don't understand ourselves. As
care to understand.
Or care to understand ourselves.
The whole thing is based on your experiences. When obstacles come our way, we learn from that.
Yeah.
Either we wilt or either we succeed.
Sink or swim.
Exactly. Sink or swim. So if we swim and we cross that bar, don't be under the illusion that this is it. No, there'll be bigger mountains to face.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And every mountain you face, you learn something. And that's how your decision making also becomes better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me tell you an example. Like my dad, he was a sole breadwinner. All right, he's 90 years old. My mom was a homemaker. So every decision which was made was only through his perspective. Because he earns bread for you. So you had no say. But things have changed.
Yeah.
Like I come here, I struggle, get married. But then my perspective towards my wife changes completely. I don't imbibe what I've learned and looked up to my dad for.
Yeah.
Because I know what her value is. She knows my value. And when we face obstacles, we both face together. So even single-handedly when you have to face, you can become an example.
Correct.
Yes.
All right. You set by example, and then she follows you. At times, she says, it's okay. You don't have to stress too much.
I got this.
And then you look up to her and say, this is what I need to be at this point of time. So we both complement each other.
Yeah.
And this is where
Yours sounds like a very healthy marriage. By the way.
oh, you bet. And we have a tacit understanding in a lot of things.
This is
Like
fantastic.
when it comes to a certain decision, we just look at each other. We just say no.
You don't
yes.
need to discuss it.
Nothing,
It's already
really.
understood.
So we know each other so well. And in fact, she's the one who has always stood by me because I've faced so many failures in life. I've not given up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not given up. I have gone a cut above, learned and improved and whatever it is. But she has stood by the rock.
Yeah.
And she's so calm. I could get panicked at
Do you
times.
know why though? That's because she saw you in your masculine leadership form.
True.
That even when you were failing or you were struggling, you stood
I stood
strong.
by- I stood
you were
by.
decisive.
That's
You were confident,
Yeah.
and she was just like, "Wow, that's an unfailing man."
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So now I need to raise myself up
Exactly.
to be
True.
the equal.
Yes.
So when this person's going to fall down a little bit in energy or in performance or whatever, that I will carry the slack.
Yes.
And this is that critical example that I learned, which is so beautiful. It's just that in a unit, there's 100 points of expression of energy.
True.
Someone will walk into the door. Let's say the man had a really crappy day, comes in and he's like 80% depleted. He's got 20% energy. It's her job or her responsibility or her motivation to actually cover up the rest of that to make it 100.
Right.
There are going to be days when it's the other way around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Or there are days that are beautiful and you're 50-50. Right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's the definition of it. It's not like we're all going to put in 100% on both sides. That's never been the definition.
Yeah.
You
So-
see,
so
you see,
you're lucky
you see, you
in
see,
where
you
you
see
are.
the mental ability of a woman. Let me discuss this. It's very important. You see, if something should happen to my wife, and if I'm mentally not strong, the next thing I do is drinking, drugs. I go down the hill.
Yes.
But you see, it's the opposite of
And she loses respect for you.
exactly. But then, if should something happen to me, you always see she will stand by you.
Yes.
She will go a notch higher.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
There are not two alcoholics in the household.
Absolutely, absolutely not.
Very well said.
And that is what makes a difference, really. That's why.
Look, I'll tell you. Sorry to go on.
That's why I say. I mean, we always say, when you look for your partner, don't look for compatibility, which will
Yeah.
never be there.
And even if it is, it will change as time goes on.
Yeah,
Changes.
yeah. You evolve.
Exactly.
Yeah. We all grow and
Look
change.
at the mental aspect. Where do you fit mentally?
Yeah.
And if
By
that
the way,
is
doesn't
there,
that come right back down to principles and values?
exactly.
Yeah.
But then again,
You might have different principles and values, but they're like Lego pieces that are
exactly.
just fitting
as
in.
long
right?
as the problem is the communication.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
Look, I'll tell you a little story about.
You need to
that
communicate in everything and anything,
Comes
whether
from
good
my,
or bad or whatever it is. Just put it across.
Correct.
I'll tell you a little story that comes from one of my favorite books. It's called The Courage to Be Disliked.
Oh, I love that.
You know this book? You ever read this
I'm
book?
actually
No,
reading
I
it.
haven't.
I'm reading
I
it as we
haven't.
speak.
I've recommended it to so many friends and clients and family. And anybody that's watching that knows me knows how much I rant on about this book. It's basically written as a conversation rather than just, in paragraph form. And it's a conversation between a youth and a philosopher. And the philosopher, essentially, to cut a long story short, the philosopher kind of advocates for what they call Adlerian psychology, philosophy. And so I think his name was Alfred Adler. He was a German philosopher or psychologist. He was a protege of Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud. And they believed in a type of psychology that was etiology, the idea of cause and effect.
Cause and
right? Whereas he was a pioneer more of what we call teleology, which is basically the idea that you're not to just say, well, this is what happened to you as a child, therefore this is why you are the way you are today. Because essentially what that's doing is anchoring you to the past.
It's reductive.
It's reductive. And so it's saying that, yes, okay, these things have happened. This is perhaps part of what's helped to shape you. But it's about what meaning you give to those things that have happened in your life, and that you don't anchor yourself
And
to the
how
past.
much of the meaning.
And how, yes, exactly.
Among the
how much
variety of
meaning you
other
give
things.
It. Yes, exactly. And part of that story was the youth challenging the philosopher. He was saying, well, I've got a friend who, he just lives in his mum's basement and plays video games and doesn't like to go out and socialize and all this kind of stuff. And the philosopher said to him, so he's choosing to be unhappy. And you just think, hang on a minute. Why would anybody choose to be unhappy? And to the point of what would you do first in terms of cultivating your manhood and cultivating your masculinity and redefining yourself as a person? I think it's about choice. And sometimes I think we have a hard time differentiating between what is conscious choice and what is subconscious choice.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the subconscious choices we make, we tend to blame on other things and other people, and other situations or our environment, when actually it's our own choices that we make or non-choices or inactions that we're doing and not fully aware of. I think that that's a really important thing to understand, that you are, like you said before, not making a decision is making a decision.
Yeah.
So not making...
But with reason.
But with reason,
But with
yes,
reason.
exactly. And so whether we realize what the reason is or not, we are still making a choice to not do something. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is it has to be active. Whatever it is that you need to change about yourself, or that you need to look internally, the self-awareness and the self-development that you need to, to be present in your life, has to be active. It's not just going to happen.
Yeah.
These things don't just fall into your lap.
You need to work towards it.
You have to work towards it.
Exactly.
You have to identify first what it is, and then you have to action it. And without that, it's just not going to happen.
There's an element of decisiveness involved here, right?
Yes,
Some
of course.
decision needs to be made, because most
Yeah.
decisions, beyond the fact that becomes part of your rote activity list of the day, like brushing your teeth and getting up and doing all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about something that's actively chosen to be done, right? So there's a decision making aspect here.
Yeah.
More importantly, excuse me, what I found very interesting is that you can get stuck in this passive loop of constantly falling prey further and further and further. But going back to the original point, I think there's a beautiful marriage of ideas here, right? One is being actively present and not letting the passive take over, and the other hand is knowing what your personal mission statement is.
Yeah.
Because your mission statement will prevent you from falling prey to passive things and to make active decisions then, right? So if you can build that, and it's a constantly evolving mission statement, right? I mean, this is who I am, this is what I want to be. A lot of people actually will put that down into a mood board and all sorts of stuff, all those things where they will start dividing it into lists of what I need to achieve, how. There's that whole 1% growth thing that they talk about.
Yeah.
But as accurate or inaccurate as that is, it's a discovery process. And as you build that and as you go through it, you will start cleaving and cutting out all the fat. And you will find out it's like, okay, I tried this doesn't work. This is not me. It doesn't work for me. This, oh, that's good. I'm going to leave this here. This is now that from the funnel, I've received it. I'm going to move on. And by the time you've reached, every year you pass by, you've added more and more blocks to that Jenga tower you're building.
Yes.
That's right.
And therein lies active processing of not just information, but taking decisions and actioning things, and constant evolving mission and vision statement for yourself, knowing full well what your principles and your values are that are going to define you as a human being and help you grow, becoming more masculine in that expression of energy that you've got.
Like you said in the last episode, that you've got a group of friends who wake up in the morning at 3 and you're good to go.
Yeah.
So if that is what you want, go ahead. Have like-minded friends. Have like-minded people who will help you grow, not who will drag you down. Shut out the outside
We all
noise.
know this, right?
Yeah,
5.
exactly.
You're the amalgamation of the 5 people you surround yourself
Yes.
with.
That's what I'm saying.
However, let me play a little devil's advocate on that. And I will say that sometimes having people in your life who are completely different to you can challenge you to see where your gaps are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Right? So if you and I have completely different perspectives, maybe completely different tastes, whatever those things are in life that we might be completely diametrically opposed, in whatever way that is, well, we tend to resonate most with people who are like quite similar to us in that sort of way, which is obvious. But then, of course, there is that kind of resistance, I think, sometimes when you meet somebody who's definitely not similar to you. And then you have a conversation with this person and maybe you don't have anything in common. Or maybe they say things that don't really resonate with you. You have to address what that resistance is inside you. What is it that doesn't resonate with me about it? Because they could be perfectly fine. What they're saying isn't necessarily abhorrent or distasteful. It just happens to be different to what you might think. And so there is a natural resistance to who that person is. So I think that having people in your life who aren't necessarily just a contrarian, but maybe they're just not like you. Maybe they don't think like you. Maybe their lifestyle isn't like yours. You know, like if I spent every single moment of my life around other people who were just constantly involved in fitness, my life would be really boring. You know,
It's interesting you mentioned this, but don't you think this is a concept of compartmentalization?
perhaps.
Now, if I have a group of friends who we like to go hiking together, we get along on hiking. This is our thing. As soon as you add to it a certain other type of activity, most of them might not be very interested, and then I have to find another group for that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm also challenging myself to break into something else and try that out and test it out, and I need a group to kind of help me keep the energy up so that I can turn this into an activity. And I could particularly fail and just decide on like I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And there is a good probability that there are already a group of people that are doing it. Let's say it's a sport activity. I want to get into tennis. And then I found a group that does tennis and I join it as an amateur and I do it and I hate it. But I still joined it, put myself into that uncomfortable situation to learn and expand. And again, going back to the original point is just keep adding to that list of like, I'm discovering myself.
Yes.
I'm finding where I am. But it goes right to that point you're saying, is challenging yourself to be uncomfortable. That comes from within.
Absolutely.
Right? It's just like, otherwise I can be comfortable with the hiking group and just go hiking all the time, right? I mean, done here.
Of course.
Right?
That is also one aspect of it. Like, you want to be liked by others.
Yes.
That's
You get the point.
It's a beautiful
now,
point, actually.
If I've got a group, all right, I know this is my comfort. I love being with them. But then comes the opposition, which challenges you. You have got two things. Either you accept or you decline.
Yeah.
But then if you decline, you'll say, oh my goodness, he doesn't like me.
Yeah.
If you think in a positive mindset and say, that's a nice one.
That's a beautiful,
I mean,
that's a whole
yes.
different topic, by the way.
I'm gonna,
Exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Yes, so-
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's such a
would
beautiful
say,
topic.
I'd say, okay, look, so, I mean, I think we should probably wrap it up there with this with this particular episode, so we can summarize it in a short term. How would you summarize what we've spoken about in this episode?
I think definition of a man is critical for you to understand what you feel defines the true purpose of a man, true existence of a man, expression of masculine energy. Now that is just between us. We've got different versions of an answer for that. So it's a subjective answer. However, there is a foundation that defines the core pillars historically. We're talking about centuries worth of information that's available to us to tell us that this is the bare minimum a man needs to have. So discovering that, I would think, would be critical, and then holding on to that as immovable, unshakable values that you do. And that leads into the second point. I feel it's important for us to build our an idea of just putting down, here are my values, here are my principles. There are some things I'm unshakable on. It could be as simple as like, I'm just not going to hurt anyone. However, I'm not going to let anyone else take advantage of me either. So how do I build that balance? Maybe you discover over time, but these are values now. Right? Similarly, there might be 2 or 3 other values. There are some things that are not negotiable, some are non-negotiable, and you put that down. So I feel if we are to summarize this, it's not difficult to define a man, but it is very subjective.
Very.
And you just have to define what percentage you're going to put to each one of the factors that you feel defines a good man. And it's very, very important as a final point to understand that you could be latched on to a bad definition of a man also.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And as soon as you discover that, there is no shame in knowing that maybe this is that little vestigial, skin layer that you
need to climb back out of this rabbit hole.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Wilson, what's your summarization?
I think he has stolen all my lines. But having said that, 2 or 3 points. Be of a positive mindset.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be willing to take decisions, as we said. Leadership. Even if you fall, stand up. Don't give up. Shut the outside noise. Don't worry about what others say.
Yes.
You stand firm on your own principles. You might not have friends. That's fine. Some day will come. That day will come when the one who criticized you will look up to you and say, this is something, so let's
I
follow.
think we all have examples for that.
You understand? So that is a man. Stand for yourself, love yourself, be a positive mindset.
Agreed.
I'm curious to hear yours.
My summary, I would just say be active in your own self-discovery. These things don't happen by accident. Understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. Be be self-aware, try to work on your self-awareness as well as your self-development. And just, I think that for me, is probably a good sum.
That's actually very tight. Yeah, that was fantastic, actually.
All right, guys. So thank you very much for watching the episode. Hope you enjoyed it. And like and subscribe for more content. And we'll see you on the next one.